Hello, welcome to the Fantastic Fiction at KGB reading series. Fantastic Fiction is a monthly speculative fiction reading series held on the third Wednesday of every month, hosted by Ellen Datlow and me, Matthew Kressel. We spotlight well-known and up-and-coming science fiction, fantasy, and horror authors, and admission is always free. We publish a monthly podcast and video so people who can't attend the in-person event can still enjoy the readings. If you'd like to support the series, you can donate at kgbfantasticfiction.org/support. Anyway, on to the show.
Good evening. Oh, come on, you can do better than that. All right. God, I sound like Matthew McConaughey. What's going on there? All right. Welcome. I don't know why I'm out of breath. I just got from over there to over here. I should probably go to a cardiologist. My name's Matt Kressel. I co-host a series, Fantastic Fiction at KGB. We are a monthly reading series. I co-host with Ellen Datlow. You should all give Ellen Datlow a hand. Ellen now has bionic vision. If she looks at you the wrong way, lasers will shoot out of her eyes and you will melt. So behave. We're always free. There is never a cover charge. We don't charge you anything hard or soft. All we ask is that you buy a drink, hard or soft. And if you buy a cocktail, make sure you order it neat. That is, with no ice. So I will let Ellen introduce our guests for 2026. Happy New Year, by the way. If I can get a quick show of hands for folks here for the first time at the Fantastic Fiction Reading Series. All right, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. If you'd like to join our mailing list, it's kgbfantasticfiction.org, or you can follow Ellen and myself on all the socials. We do not spam. We do not sell your email. And we have got a great lineup for 2026. We really do. I'll let Ellen announce those readers, but I'm excited for our readers tonight. I met both of them tonight. I have to say that they're just already. I'm excited. They're awesome folks, and I'm excited to hear them read. By the way, I just want to say, let's all give Mary the bartender a big hand for keeping us hydrated. And love you too, Mary. Thank you. And Lincoln the bouncer outside, who's making sure that none of that riffraff gets in here. Although maybe the riffraff is in here and not out there. Our first guest, our first reader tonight is Robert P. Ottone. Robert is the two-time Bram Stoker Award-winning author of The Triangle and There's Something Sinister in Centerfield. He's also the author of The Vile Thing We Created, as well as the collections Her Infernal Name and Tear Me Open, Fears Unwrapped. His next novel, Amityville Awakens, by the way, I grew up right next to Amityville. Amityville Awakens is coming from Clash Books October 6, 2026. A bagel-loving fabulist of spooky absurdity, Ottone enjoys cigars and time with his wife at their home in upstate New York. Here's Robert.
Hello. It's an honor to be here. My heroes have read here, and now I get to be here. This is crazy. I'm going to read to you the first chapter from my book that formally gets announced tomorrow. This is from Amityville Awakens. The house on Ocean Avenue sat vacant in the village of Amityville for nearly 20 years. Pablo Antonio Mendez spent his teens riding past it on his bike from time to time after his parents moved to North Amityville, recent arrivals from El Salvador. It didn't take long for a new kid like Pablo to learn all about the Amityville horror house. Classmates in junior high whispered about the bleeding walls, the voices screaming "Get out," and the dreaded red room in the basement. Pablo struggled at first to understand what these new words were: ghost, blood, haunt, but he pieced their meaning together pretty quickly. How could a family live in such a haunted place? It didn't make sense, but every time Pablo rode by, whether he saw the young family who'd taken up residence there or not, an icy spike ran up the back of his neck. By the time he reached 9th grade, his English had gotten better. He was studying hard, he had friends, he ran track, he even had a girlfriend. Pablo remembered when the last family to live at the horror house were evicted from their home in the middle of the night. Mostly, Pablo remembered the rumors, the warnings, whispers of something deeper, darker in the home, in the village of Amityville itself, as if the very ground he rode his bike on was filled with horrors. There were other reasons, Pablo figured, that kids warned him about the house. Students like Pablo would get jumped in the village of Amityville. Sometimes they'd just be run out of town, other times not so lucky. "Io," he remembered his father saying, "I don't want to hear about you going to the village." Pablo always listened intently when his father spoke. "That is a dead place." Amityville was divided by a busy road. Pablo never understood why it was called a highway when it was really just a 4-lane main street. The house on Ocean Avenue was just a short bike ride away, and he disregarded his father's warnings frequently. As an adult, with his dad's words echoing in his mind, crossing the highway into the village of Amityville gave him pause. There was something in the air. He wondered if others could feel it too. That same heady mix of excitement and anxiety he felt as a kid rolling past the house. Everyone in Amityville knew the house's history. There was the DeFeo family, murdered mysteriously in the night as they slept by oldest child Ronald Jr. He claimed something in the house made him do it. Changed his tune later, of course, and rumors of the mafia, of incest, of drug use ran rampant. It was a mess. Then came the Lutz family. Their stories of the supernatural sparked the world's interests. Books, movies, more rumors. The Camp family was different. Pablo had always heard they were quiet, kept to themselves, got the house cheap after it sat vacant for a long time, until the night they, too, were evicted from the home, never to return. And when that happened, it was like all the old wounds in Amityville reopened. Rumors circulated about goo running up the walls, people hearing echoes of gunshots from the night the DeFeo family was murdered, people seeing an eerie glow in the windows each night. It was all the stuff of urban legend, taking shape through embellishment and exaggeration, like a game of telephone played on a larger scale throughout both Amityvilles, North and the Village. As a teen, for Pablo, none of his parents' efforts to keep what happened on Ocean Avenue a secret mattered, because at school, after that cold December night in 1995, all anyone could do was talk about the house. In the lunchroom, where Pablo sat with his friends every day, whispers in the back of classrooms. "It is a dead place, Pablo." These words echoed in his mind even now, parked across the street from the legendary home. He sat in his truck anxiously waiting for the client who'd hired his demolition team to arrive and let them in. Though the Camps left 17 years prior, there hadn't been news about the house in as many years. He felt a pang of anxiety as he stared at the looming Dutch colonial. Brown shingles with white gutters, large windows, old shutters, mostly rotted after 2 decades of coastal northeastern weather. It was odd to see a home in such disrepair in the middle of an affluent Long Island suburb, but that was part of the reason Pablo and his team were there, to begin demolition of a decaying, charred building with a past neither town wanted to confront. When the house mysteriously caught fire, a year after the Camps vacated, the fire department and the cops were baffled. There was no electricity fed to the home. No oil, gas, nothing. Authorities eventually settled on burglars or vagrants, but neighbors never reported seeing anyone near the home. The fire had left a black scar that trailed from the left side of the roof down across the rear of the house. There was almost no damage to the interior of the attic, beyond some melted insulation, according to the company who hired Pablo's team. As Pablo unloaded his sledgehammer from the back of the truck, he reflected on when he got the job to tear the place down. He fell into a YouTube rabbit hole, part research, part scaring himself late at night while his family slept. Cavito got out of his truck and walked over. "Has to be haunted, right?" Cavito said before hauling the demo hammer from the bed of his truck. "Folks just leaving a nice place like this?" "Could be," said Cal. He was the only non-Honduran on the crew. "Ustedes dos saben cómo usar uno de estos?" Cal asked a few of the new hires as he held up a reciprocating saw. Cal's Spanish was good, learned from years of working with Pablo. The new guys, roommates of Cavito that Pablo had only met once before, Victor and Memo, were green but strong. They'd made a good addition to the crew if they stuck around long enough. Cavito had assured him that they were good guys, but Pablo had yet to see them in action. If they couldn't stack up, the whole crew would end up putting in extra hours at the end of the week. As Pablo led his crew up the driveway into the backyard of the home, he surveyed the area. Overgrown grass, broken windows, a cellar door that was mostly splinters. He'd often felt people watching him as he cruised the streets of the village, enjoying beautiful summers, springs, and early falls on Long Island. Sometimes he questioned whether all of the eyes watching him were human. He thought it again now, briefly, but again brushed away the thought. "You ever seen pictures of this place in the 70s? Cavito asked. "Used to be beautiful," Cal said. "Dutch colonial. They don't make them like this anymore." They were standing on the porch now, and Cal ran his hands along the cedar shingles. "Think these are original? How long's this place been empty?" "Almost 20 years, Pablo said. "The camps vacated in 95. Place caught fire 1 year later, but got out pretty quickly." "That's the year I met Cheryl," Cal beamed. He took his wallet out, a faded, worn sticker of the Haitian flag on it, and showed Memo and Victor an old picture of his wife. Pablo had seen it 100 times. "Ain't she a beauty?" Memo and Victor looked at each other and shrugged. A large SUV rolled up the driveway, and a fit woman in a gray pantsuit stepped out, all smiles. She wore Ray-Bans and walked on unsure heels across the overgrown lawn toward Pablo and his crew. "No spooky talk. Here comes the boss," Pablo said. "You the demo crew? Paul Anthony's guys?" She pointed toward the truck, which had Paul Anthony Demolition for all your demo needs on the side. "I'm Cal, the foreman." Cal extended his hand. There was a moment's hesitation before she shook his hand and sighed dramatically. "I'm glad one of your crew speaks English. I'm Donna. I work for Mr. Linklater. I believe you said you'll have the interior completely stripped at the beginning of next week?" Pablo smiled to himself and turned away from Cal as he went over the terms of their contract with the group. Even though he spoke perfect English, he preferred to let Cal do the talking on site. Nobody needed to know that Paul Anthony was him. He just needed the cash to pay his guys. Pretending to be just another worker and not the owner of a profitable demolition company left Pablo able to focus on the job itself and not have to hustle to find work under his real name. Pablo rounded the corner of the home, looked up, and felt a slight chill crawl up his back as his eyes landed on the 2 quarter-moon windows that sat in the loft on the 3rd floor of the house. For the briefest moment, the way the light reflected off the window pane, Pablo thought he saw a soft red glow from within. The quick visual made his pulse quicken, and the ice that began in his thighs buried itself at the base of his skull. He thought of the scene in the Amityville Horror, when the father sees a demonic monster clearly made of rubber in the window. Pablo rolled his eyes. "We good, boss?" Cal whispered to Pablo as Donna thumbed through some documents. His reverie was broken. "There's nothing in this home but broken glass, bad wiring, and shag carpeting," he thought to himself. "Not even rubber demons in the attic." Pablo could hear Cavito's boombox all the way from the 1st floor as he stood in the loft on the 3rd. He stared out the left quarter-moon window, looking down on the lawn where he was standing moments earlier. The crew had begun their work, Cal in the basement, Cavito and Memo on the 1st floor, and Victor on the 2nd. The house hadn't changed much since 1995, beyond the remarkably minimal fire damage to the exterior. The crimson shag carpeting that ran from the 1st floor up the stairs to the 2nd, like a growing red fungus, was a holdover from the 70s. Pictures of the Camp family still lined the stairwell, and the furniture and other items were exactly where they left them when they evacuated on that strange, frozen night. The kitchen cabinets were all open, stale and rotted food greeting the demo crew when they stepped inside. If there had not been a broken window above the kitchen sink, the entire 1st floor would have stunk to high heaven. "Looks like a Cavito job," Cal joked, handing him a large plastic garbage bag. The strangest thing to Pablo was the dining room. The table, which served as the centerpiece of the room, was split in 2, its sharp, broken angles dug into the wood flooring. The crew postulated that maybe a couple teenagers broke in one night and jumped on or wrestled on it or something, but when Cal examined the table, he shook his head, saying, "This is walnut, boss. You'd have to really get some acceleration and force behind you to do this." Pablo felt a pang of sadness knowing that the Linklater group planned on turning the storied home into a multi-family condo. It was more than "they don't make them like this anymore," too. There was history here. Sure, the Amityville Horror was a stain on the village, one that existed long before Pablo arrived in the United States. Everyone knew about it, the movies, the books. There was more than enough information about whether or not the house was actually haunted or not. As the events in the village faded from public eye and the camp couple moved and reported no green goo dripping down or up the walls, no congregation of flies attacking any Catholic priest, which wouldn't happen anyway, the camps were devout Episcopalians, no blood pooling in bathtubs or showers, people started regarding the whole event as nonsense. The Lutzes seemed like a family looking to make a quick buck. As Pablo got older, and eventually moved out of his parents' house, he watched the 1979 movie starring Mr. Barbra Streisand himself, James Brolin. He remembered thinking that the movie sucked, but that it had good music and at least one creepy scene, the aforementioned insect attack on Rod Steiger's priest character. The sequels that Pablo found himself watching, whenever they were on TV, were more or less garbage, but he did like the fictionalized portrayal of the DeFeo family's murders in the 1982 prequel/sequel that followed the original. The sound of a sudden gunshot made Pablo jump. He turned and looked toward the staircase leading down to the second floor and took a deep breath. Just Victor using the demo hammer. A fly buzzed Pablo's face, and he swatted at it, its obnoxious bzzz growing soft as it disappeared into the darkness of the attic. He waited for a creepy voice in the darkness to tell him to get out, but it never came. He began tearing down some of the fixtures along the walls in the loft, his dad's warning repeating in his mind as every shadow caught his attention, inky splotches in the corners of the open, hungry space. The dust lingering in the air didn't help much, and Pablo adjusted the respirator affixed to his face. He felt claustrophobic, given the expansive space of the third floor. A shadow moved along the far wall opposite where he stood. Pablo blinked a few times and realized it was just the light playing tricks. Shadows don't move, he reminded himself. He stepped toward it and knew that if this was in fact a horror movie, this would be the moment when the shadow came to life and attacked him. But nothing happened. Instead, Pablo studied the shadow on the wall and realized that it wasn't actually a shadow at all, but a stain that curved at the top, about the shape of a person. Maybe mold, he thought, examining it closer, running a finger along it. Flecks of black scraped off, foul-smelling, with a reddish tint. The scent was enough to make Pablo gag a moment, even through the respirator, before he can get a breath of fresh air closer to the windows. Cavito jokingly called the dark mold along the walls downstairs a mark of leprosy when he saw it. The Bible, boss. Oldest mold remediation document in the world, Leviticus. He shall then look at the mark on the seventh day. If the mark is spread in the garment, whether in the warp or in the woof or in the leather, whatever the purpose for which the leather is used, the mark is a leprous malignancy. It is unclean. Pablo didn't put much stock in Cavito's musings. He just wanted to get the job done and get out of what many believed to be the most haunted house on the East Coast. It is unclean. The music from below drifted upward, and Pablo steadied himself, thinking of the soft notes as a kind of lifeline to his crew throughout the house. He could hear them working, all except Cal in the basement. Cavito taking a sledgehammer to the walls, Memo using a pry bar in the bathroom, Victor using the demo hammer on the brick wall in the kitchen. Breathing hard, he wiped his forehead with his shirt and shook some of the dust and debris from his hair. Hello, Pablo. As if the words were whispered directly into his ear. He spun quickly, expecting to see Cavito or Cal behind him. Instead, he saw nothing. Just the dim converted attic of the home, now coated in shadow. The stain remained, a contrast of darkness against faded wallpaper in the shadowy space. Hello? Pablo called into the darkness. Nothing. During lunch, the men sat scattered either in the cab of Cavito's pickup truck or along the curb opposite the home. Cavito had been sent to the noshery with the order written in Cal's perfectly legible block script. Somehow, he still managed to mess up Pablo's bologna and cheese with mayo on a hero. Instead, Pablo picked at a ham and Swiss on rye. Sorry, boss, Cavito said. I don't know what happened. It's okay, amigo. Pablo shrugged. He'd be starving by the end of the day. I'm going to go back in and get some teardown going on the second floor. Cal, if anyone comes by and complains about the guys eating, I'll take care of it, boss. You want some help in there? I don't mind skipping lunch today, Cal said. All good. I'll see you guys in a bit, yeah? Cavito repeated Pablo's words in Spanish to Victor and Memo. They nodded and gave him a thumbs up. Victor and Memo were quiet, but they'd mentioned earlier how dark the place was. That light from the windows didn't seem like enough, and they said they'd bring their portable work lights the next day. Pablo wrapped his barely picked out sandwich and placed it on the driver's seat of the truck before slamming the door shut. He turned to the house and started across the street, spotting the foot-long no trespassing sign the camps put up, now laying in the overgrowth of the hedge wall that separated the property from the road. Reaching into the bush to clear the sign from the underbrush, Pablo felt the sting of something biting into his hand. The hedge wall had grown thick, and prickly vines clawed their way from inside, desperate for light, moisture, and attention. Pablo drew his hand to his mouth, unconsciously sucking the blood. The taste of copper flooded his mouth, even though the wound itself was no worse than a scratch. He dropped the broken no trespassing sign on the inside of the lawn, depressing a small section of grass. Shaking the bandana in his left pocket, Pablo tied his pricked and bleeding hand. At first, he couldn't be sure, but then heard, over the bird song and hiss of the cicadas, the sound of a sharp metallic creak. Looking up, he watched as the front door of the house opened slowly on its own, hinges squealing as the light of early afternoon failed to penetrate the shadow within. Instinctively, Pablo stepped closer, tightening the bandana on his hand. He pushed away the tall grass that stood between him and the door. Segments of gray-yellow weeds grew between the paving stones that once served to welcome visitors to the front door. Stepping onto the steps, Pablo could make out the kitchen in the back right corner of the house, sunlight struggling to break through the dusty windows. The front door was actually on the side of the house, as the entire structure was essentially a sideways triangle. The dining room was barely visible in Pablo's right. He turned back toward the driveway, where he could see Cal beyond the hedges eating lunch and chatting with the crew. "Guys, did you leave the front door open?" Either Pablo's words didn't actually escape his lips, or the crew couldn't hear him. "Guys?" he repeated. But instead of Cal or Cavito answering him, Pablo was met with the sound of a great inhalation of air from within the house. It reminded him of going swimming back home in El Salvador, emerging from the glistening ocean and gulping for air. He closed his eyes and braced himself, a shudder surging its way up his spine. He'd seen the movies. He'd read Jay Anson's book about the storied home, but the voice in the attic, the sound of something swallowing air, the darkness that seemed to grow more the more time the crew spent inside. A dead place. Staring up into the house, Pablo could see a pair of glowing yellow-gold eyes peering out from a doorway. He thought for a moment that they were just a glare from the upstairs windows, but no. They took definitive shape in the dark of one of the rooms that had once belonged to one of the Lutz children. He closed his eyes, pressing them shut hard, as if he could somehow make the image disappear. When he opened his eyes and glanced around the upstairs landing of the home, he saw a little boy, face pressed between the balusters of the stairs, blank, pale, emotionless in every way, but not the eyes. There was hunger there, deep and ravenous. Shadows emerged behind the boy, stains like the one in the attic. They grew, pouring forth from the walls, first 2, then 3, then 8, then far too many to count. I can't see this, Pablo said, turning from the house and walking down the steps, across the yard, down the driveway to his truck. He turned to Cal. "I'll be back to pick you guys up later. I'm not feeling well. I'll send another set of hands to help out and finish the job." "What's wrong, boss?" Cal asked, placing a hand on Pablo's shoulder. "Nothing. Everything's fine," Pablo said, climbing behind the wheel. His fingers fumbled with his keys, but eventually he started the engine. Cavito closed the cab of the truck, and in seconds Pablo was soaring down Ocean Avenue, glancing nervously in his rearview mirror at the crew he'd left behind. He didn't know it at the time, but it would be the last he'd ever see of them.
Thank you. That was great. Do either of you have books to sell by any chance? No? All right. We're going to come back in about 10 minutes, have some drinks, and relax and talk to each other.
Yeah.
Hello, welcome back. Hey, woo. Okay, we're back. And before we introduce our next reader, I'm going to tell you some of the readers we have coming this year. In February 11th, Timothy Shawaga and Michael Sisko. March 11th, Christina Ten and C.S.E. Cooney. April 8th, Mike Allen and Michael Swanwick. May 13th, Micaiah Johnson and Siobhan Carroll. June 10th, Nicholas Kaufman and A.C. Wise. And after that, we have Justin Key, Kaylee Peterson, not Patterson, Peterson. And Jeffrey, and in September, we have Jeffrey Ford and John Foster. And so on and so forth. So that's coming up. But right now, we have Rachel Harrison, who is a New York Times bestselling author of 7 horror novels, most recently Play Nice, and the forthcoming Kiss, Slay, Replay. Her short fiction has appeared in numerous anthologies and in her collection, Bad Dolls. She lives in New Jersey with her husband and their cat/overlord. You can find her stuck on New Jersey Transit or at rachel-harrison.com. Please welcome Rachel.
Thank you. Hi. Thanks for being here tonight. Hope everyone's having a good night. I'm going to read Goblin, which is a story from my collection, Bad Dolls. Ready? 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 Okay, let's go. Let's do it. It was Danny's idea to download The Goblin. We were in the dressing room at H&M, and she kept sending me out for different sizes. I passed her multiple pairs of the same jeans through the curtain as the attendant disapproved from behind a rack of unwanted clothes. None of my clothes fit, Danny said, as she pulled me into her dressing room. I found this incredible dress to wear to Michelle and Ben's wedding, but I don't feel good in it, you know what I mean? I said, stumbling over a pair of skinny high-rises. I need to lose 5 pounds, she said. Will you do it with me? I do better with a partner. I heard it's super easy. You just download the app and you get a goblin. Is it tech or magic? I asked. She shrugged. Some people are good at saying no. Toddlers are good at saying no. Virgins are good at saying no. God is good at saying no. I am not good at saying no. She said we'd start on Monday. Poor Monday, I thought. It's the Ringo of days. I reconsidered my decision later that night, letting the shower run hot so the bathroom filled with steam and diluted the light, making it kinder to my body. I used to shower in the dark, but then I got into the habit of feeling myself with my hands and warping my proportions. Eventually, I relented and turned the lights back on. I couldn't go on cutting myself shaving. My shins looked like butcher block. I counted the little pink scars as I sat on the edge of the tub, wrapped in a towel, my toes swirling, the soap suds roving toward the drain. I thought about calling Danny and politely backing out of the diet. The only problem was I wouldn't know how to answer if she asked me why. Well, not the only problem. My plucky past self had committed to going to this wedding, stuffed the RSVP in the mail with the stunning arrogance of a white-collar criminal. 4 months ago, I'd been certain this wedding was the perfect opportunity to prove to myself that I was finally over him, to be in the same room and for once not feel like an unwanted puppy, like a sad footnote in someone else's love story. A few weeks out, I wasn't feeling so confident, but it was too late now. I'd committed, chosen salmon over chicken. What would they think if I didn't show? On Sunday night, I spent 2 hours debating whether I should order Chinese food before ordering Chinese food. The weeks ahead of me loomed in the image of a giant undressed salad. Of course I caved. Sesame chicken with brown rice, pork lo mein, wonton soup, and egg roll. They threw in those flavorless, crunchy noodles, and I ate them mindlessly, dunking them in duck sauce. There were 2 fortune cookies, which meant they assumed there would be 2 people eating the food. My first fortune said, "Joys are often the shadows cast by sorrows." I was too traumatized to open the second. I ate until it was painful, until I had to lie on my side to stop from feeling like I was going to burst. I messaged Danny. Last supper? Bottle of rosé to my face. I eyed the catastrophe strewn about my coffee table, the empty container of chicken, the stray noodles drooping over the side of the grease-stained takeout box, used napkins and leaky sauce packets oozing soy onto the ripped paper bag it all came in. A few crumbs of crunchy noodles powdered the wreckage. I replied, "Noodles?" I threw everything away, took out the garbage, cleaned the coffee table with a Lysol wipe. I lit a candle to mask the smell. I'll make up for it tomorrow, I said, washing my hands like Lady Macbeth. Tomorrow. Danny came over after work to download the app. We started the diet first thing, but decided to wait to get the app until we were together. We were too afraid to do it alone. I had seen what the goblins looked like in ads, cute and animated, Smurf-esque, gotta get a goblin. I resisted Googling to avoid the opinion of hangry strangers. Dieters aren't reliable, always quick to jump on bandwagons only to abandon them twice as fast. Atkins, South Beach, Master Cleanse, Paleo, Whole30s, until the studies find you should really base your diet on your blood type. Hope everyone's okay. Until the other studies find that's bullshit. Danny showed up in head-to-toe Adidas, a smoothie in each hand. All I'd eaten that day was oatmeal and cucumber slices. I was grateful for the smoothie, but also wanted to smack it out of her hand. We sat at my kitchen table holding our phones. We opened the App Store. It was the second most popular Goblin app, coming in after Goblin Quest. Ready? She asked me. It's $4.99. Meg? Okay. We pressed our thumbs and waited. 2 tiny green goblins appeared, each about 6 inches tall. Danny's wore a nightcap and glittery shoes with little bells. It twirled, shook its tips side to side, and gave her a thumbs up. Danny giggled with delight. Cute, she said. I felt my face fall. My goblin was stocky. He wore an unbuttoned vest and clunky brown boots. His head was shiny and bald except for 3 thick, curly black hairs spiraling up like springs. His ears were the size of quarters, paler than the rest of him and pointy. The worst part about him was his mouth. He had fangs, 2 sharp canines poking out of flat gray lips. His arms were crossed over his chest. Mine looks angry, I said. Aw, no, he's just serious. Means business. Danny rested her chin on the table. Hello, little ones. What now? I asked. But before the words were out, the goblins were gone. They'll come back when we need them, like when we're about to make a bad choice, she said, like order Chinese. She lifted my fortune off the counter. I thought I'd thrown it out. Last supper, I said. Noodles, I told you. I know, she said, her voice like helium. I wasn't shaming. I picked at a chip in my manicure, pretended like I wasn't bothered. Want to watch a movie or something? She asked. In the movie we watched, the actress was very thin. I woke up to panic. There was commotion in my apartment. Crash, bang, slam. I might die right where I am, I thought, standing in my bedroom in mismatched flannel pajamas and slippers shaped like narwhals. I always think I'd be good in a crisis until I'm in a crisis. Then I remember the truth about myself. Something glowed in my periphery. There was a message illuminating the belly of my phone. The message said, Hi, gorgeous. Your goblin is visiting, doing some goblin good. I stepped cautiously out of my bedroom. The light was on in the kitchen. I paused in the doorway, a force field of equal parts shock and fear stopping me from going in. There it was, ripping through my cabinets. It poured out a box of reduced fat Cheez-Its and started stomping, crushing them to orange dust. Hey, I yelled from the doorway. It looked up at me, its small dark eyes narrowing. Then it returned to its destruction. It hopped over to the fridge, pulled open the door, and climbed inside. Before I fully understand what I was doing, I slammed the refrigerator door shut. From inside, I heard a horrible guttural grunting, then a distinct pop. The goblin was on the floor by my right foot. It glowered at my slipper for a moment, then drew its arm back and slapped my slipper across its adorable narwhal face. The goblin wiped its hands on its vest, walked over to the fridge, opened it, and continued its work. Stunned, I sat myself down at the table with a glass of water. I watched as it marched across the floor with a chocolate bar lifted over its head. The goblin tossed it into the garbage, along with a bag of frozen chicken fingers, a half-empty jar of Alfredo sauce, ranch dip, and a carton of vanilla soy milk. The goblin vanished after it finished clearing out my fridge. I shuffled back to bed, but couldn't calm myself to sleep. My restless mind insisted on going back to the one thing, to the one person I was trying not to think about. I wondered if Ben looked the same as he did back in college, his hair long, 5 o'clock shadow. I wondered if he wore the same clothes, the same scuffed-up combat boots with the laces loose. I remember the distinct thud his boots made when they hit my dorm room floor. Conjuring the sound still turned me on. One time he told me he loved me. He didn't mean to. I woke up in his room on a brutal February morning after promising myself I'd never go there again, but there I was, staring at the tapestry he had tacked to his ceiling, stars twirling the signs of the zodiac. He was a Capricorn. I should have known. My high school boyfriend was a Capricorn. He took my virginity and treated me like garbage, told me I should get a tan. The worst part about it was I went tanning. If I get skin cancer someday, I'll fucking scream. Hey, be back soon, Ben said. Love you. Right away, he realized what he'd done. I saw it on his face. Okay. I pulled the covers over my shoulder, pretending I was still mostly asleep. I stayed in his bed a while longer, trying to remember everything I'd learned in psychology class about Freudian slips. He's the only one I ever told about my treatment. I figured he'd understand because he has 2 sisters and because I knew it wouldn't make a difference if I told him or not. He wouldn't want me either way. It's something I still struggle with, I said. I'm sorry, he said, holding my head to his chest and kissing my forehead. You're beautiful. I thought, that's it? For me, the hunger was nostalgia, like visiting an old friend, a friend I'd forgotten how much I hated. But I'd overcome hunger before. I knew I was capable. I knew I could starve. I was highly motivated. There was the backless dress I'd ordered for the wedding, the picture of Emrata I'd taped to my fridge. Really, I just didn't want the goblin to come back. I weighed myself at the gym, breaking a dusty old promise I'd made to myself, my parents, various therapists. The numbers were mean. On Sunday, I caved and went to McDonald's, fast and dirty. I stood in line, salivating at the smell of salt and crackling hot oil. I ordered a 10-piece chicken nugget and ate them out of my jacket pockets on the walk home. I was on my 3rd when the goblin appeared. He slapped the nugget out of my hand. Hey, I said. Hey, he said, his voice gruff and ugly. He reached into my jacket and began throwing the nuggets onto the ground one by one. I managed to save 2 and shove them into my mouth. He glared at me with his beady black eyes, climbed up my arm, stood on my shoulder, and tried to pry open my mouth. He dug his fingernails into my lips. Ow! Chicken mush came spilling out, landing mostly on my chin. I shook the goblin off. I expected him to go flying, but he landed on the sidewalk before me on both feet, hands on his hips. I wiped away the half-chewed nuggets with the back of my hand. Jerk. Bitch. He kicked the dirty street nuggets into a nearby sewer grate, muttering to himself. When the last nugget was gone, he disappeared. I called Danny. She was out of breath. I'm on the elliptical. What's up? My goblin just called me a bitch. She laughed. I'm serious. They can't talk. I swear to God, it just called me a bitch. Maybe you get the goblin that suits you, she panted. You respond better to tough love. That's why you date mean men. Who is mean? Kurt, Milo, Ben. Ben wasn't mean. I said I was in love with him and he was in love with Michelle. That's different. Sure, I gotta go. I'll call you later. We hung up and I moped home. I found my workout clothes laid out for me on my bed, my sneakers on my pillows. There was a package torn open on the floor. The dress I'd bought for the wedding was hanging on the door to my closet, slinky and beautiful and small. I wanted to be angry, but I could feel the grease lingering on my chin and was disgusted with myself. I began to undress when I saw the goblin out of the corner of my eye, a smear of green disappearing. I turned to see where it went, but instead I saw myself in the full-length mirror in the yellowy hue from the ceiling picture. I saw my body as it was. No filters, no generous angles, just the brutal truth of it. My eyes traversed the landscape until I was too hysterical to keep them open, until my syrupy tears relieved me of the sight. There was this quote from my former therapist about how our bodies are our homes, and I should treat mine well because it's where I live. I remember scribbling it down in a journal I kept through my recovery. I thought about that quote while on the treadmill, the goblin turning up the speed from 6 to 6.5. I decided that when I got home, I would pull out the journal and read through it. But when I went to look, I couldn't find it. It wasn't there. Danny and I decided to meet up to celebrate a month of our goblining. We went to a popular salad place for lunch where everyone was content to wait half an hour for a salad and unsweetened ginger lemonade. It seemed like lunacy, but the truth is, a good salad is hard to find. We ate our salads on a park bench. I picked up my spinach, hunting for tiny bits of chicken or tomatoes. You didn't get dressing? Danny asked me. That's commitment. You look amazing, by the way. Glowy. I forked my dry salad. Has your goblin ever stolen anything from you? What? No, why? I shook my head. Never mind. Do you have shoes for the wedding yet? Someone told me Ben cut his hair. By someone, I mean Facebook. I needed another dose of motivation, so I started looking through his pictures, all the way back to the ones with me. Us sitting on a stoop, blowing cigarette smoke at the camera, limbs intertwined. Us playing air hockey at a random dive, his arms up in victory, me making a sad baby face. I couldn't blame myself. Ben was beautiful. The spinach was rough coming up. It was the stems that got caught. After, I made myself chamomile tea. It's what I used to do. The smell made me sleepy. I visualized the way I wanted my body to look, how I wanted other people to see me, how I wanted Ben to see me, or anyone who'd ever overlooked me, to really see me and know that I was beautiful and desirable and that I mattered. I saw a future where I didn't spend my days obsessing or feeling bad about myself. In that future, I was someone else, someone who looked nothing like me. The wedding was lovely, albeit generic. There were flowers and violins. There was Ben standing at the end of the aisle in a sharp suit. He was too far away for me to get a good look at his face. From where I sat, he could have been anyone, standard groom. There was Michelle in her mermaid gown, cathedral veil, a collection of pretty bridesmaids in not quite matching dresses. The ceremony was quick. They exchanged vows. She promised to be his teammate, but never to keep score. He promised to love her always, to put her first. There was more, but I was too busy willing my stomach to stop howling to pay close attention. At the cocktail hour, I sipped tequila slowly, avoided trays of hors d'oeuvres, bacon-wrapped shrimp, and mini quiches and deep-fried mac and cheese balls, a taco bar, and a pizza station. The reception kicked off with the highly choreographed entrance of the wedding party, featuring props such as fake mustaches and feather boas, followed by the couple's first dance. That's Ben, I told myself. That's him. But he looked so different, clean-shaven, his hair short, and he was having his first dance to The Scientist by Coldplay. The Ben I knew would have punctured his eardrums before ever listening to Coldplay. Isn't this a breakup song? Danny whispered to me. Not if you completely ignore the lyrics, I said. We watched Ben and Michelle sway back and forth, leaning against each other, necks and shoulders limp with exhausted happiness, the great burden of joy. After the speeches, the salad course materialized. Chunks of watermelon and feta and ripe, shiny tomatoes nestled in a bed of romaine. I unfolded my napkin across my lap, reached for my silverware. It was then I noticed my hands were shaking, fingers spasming, palms sweating. I eventually managed to close a fist around my fork and stab at a piece of watermelon. I deposited it between my lips and let it rest on my tongue, let it melt there. Look who it is. There was a hand on my shoulder. I didn't need to turn around to know whom it belonged to. I stood up too fast, and for a moment, the room went fuzzy, and the floor bounced beneath me. I had to put my hand on my chair to steady myself. It's good to see you, Ben said. He wasn't as tall as I remembered. Good to see you too, I said. Congratulations. Thanks, he said. We're making the rounds. Hey, Danny, you guys look great. Thanks, Danny said. We know. All right, Michelle went that way, so let me go find my bride. Ben said. See you on the dance floor? You know it, Danny said. I slid back into my chair and stared at my salad, anticipating overanalysis. I prodded at my emotions with a long stick, as if they were something dead in the woods. I interrogated myself. Are you sad? Are you angry? Are you disappointed? The truth was, all I felt was hunger. I skewered a tomato. It was only a tomato, harmless. But then the next bite, I scooped up a little feta. Excuse you. I had forgotten the simple pleasure of flavor. I ate the entire thing fast and frenzied, and my entree when it arrived, a slab of salmon pink as a sunset, resting on a fluffy cloud of mashed potatoes, fenced in by soft stalks of asparagus. A golden pool of butter gathered on one side of the plate. I sopped it up with a dinner roll. You want mine? Danny asked, offering me her roll. That's when I realized what I'd done. The shame came swift, a searing, all-consuming embarrassment. I'm deleting my goblin, she said. I'm over it. I'm just not going to eat bread. As soon as she said it, as soon as I heard goblin, the pain registered. My ankle. It had bitten me. I looked down and I saw it there, fangs dripping blood. I have to go. I grabbed my bag and beelined for the bathroom. It was all marble and neutral pink, too many mirrors. I caught a glimpse of myself. My skin was sallow, hair damp with sweat. My carefully applied eyeliner was now smudged and uneven. There was a small clump of mashed potato cradled in the silky cowl of my dress. I recoiled in horror. When I stepped back, I realized it was still there, clamped on me, its tiny jaw hinged around my ankle. I couldn't feel it, but I could hear it gnawing, and I could see the small puncture wounds, the blood. I began to flail, to kick my leg, try and buck it off me, but it was clamped on so tightly it wouldn't budge. Stop! I screamed, please! It occurred to me then that someone could walk in at any moment. I retreated to a stall. I was panting. All that food. I ate so much food, and it sat in my stomach like cement. My dress felt tight, my shapewear suffocating. I reached down for the goblin, but it was on the toilet lifting the seat. "Do it," it said in that grovelly voice. When I was done, it flushed for me. Then it stood on the back of the toilet with its arms crossed, looking smug and mean. "Go away," I said, wiping my mouth. I was completely exhausted. I sat there on the bathroom floor crying about how tired I was. "Again," the goblin said. I got to my knees, my bare skin cold against the tile, and as I made sure that my dress was shielded from splatter and that my hair was out of the way, I had an image of myself in a wedding dress shuffling around the stall, gathering up an avalanche of white fabric, layer upon layer of lace. And I knew. Even if my life were different, even if it had been my wedding day, I would have still been alone in the bathroom, hunched over a toilet. "I can't do this anymore," I said. "I'm done. I'm deleting you." It snickered. "You can't." I stood up, slid open the latch. As I stepped out of the stall, I heard it growl. I turned to see it lunging toward me. I leaned back, narrowly avoiding it, and it face-planted on the floor. I sprang forward, smashing my foot down. I hit the thing. I half expected it to have disappeared, but there it was, stunned. Its little legs snapped in different directions, one eye dangling free of its socket. It was hideous. I crouched down, and it made a low moaning noise, and for a moment, I felt sorry for it. Then I saw it smile, a cruel, mocking grin. With both its broken hands, it was flipping me off. I grabbed it. To hold it was a funny thing, kind of rubbery. It weighed a pound or two. When I squeezed, it had give, flesh, a pulse. My grip tightened to stop it from thrashing around. A fang scraped the meaty part of my hand. I always imagined rage to be a red, chaotic state, but it's quiet and translucent and euphoric, a sister to freedom. I ate the legs first. They were chewy. Once I finished the legs, it stopped screaming. The middle required paper towels. I saved an ear for last, and as I swallowed it down, I realized I quite liked the taste.
That was great. Death to all goblins. Thank you very much. Hang out if you like, and we'll see you next month.
You have been listening to the Fantastic Fiction at KGB reading series. Check out our website at kgbfantasticfiction.org and click on support if you'd like to help keep the series going. Anyway, that's our show. Thanks for listening, and see you next month.